welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today we're going to be painting the Y-Wings for Star Wars Armada. You get them as a creamy sort of colour, which isn't good enough in my book. I wanted to get them looking really good, so you get that fully immersive gameplay experience when playing on the tabletop. Before we get started, let's get the kettle on. Okay, to start off you want to get a base colour down on them. To do this I used a dark grey sort of a colour, which was Dawnstone. I wanted to try and match the colours from the films as much as possible. I thought this was quite a good fit just to give it that sort of base coat. You could spray them, but it's probably a bit of a bad idea because they'd end up flying all over the place. So I used a brush and actually just painted on the base coat myself. In the actual movies themselves, you can see there's the back area of the actual fighter or bomber, and the engines and stuff is a darker grey to the front, and then you've got a sort of lighter grey areas on the front of the nacelles and the actual sort of cockpit area. You really do want to take your time with this. You don't want to be putting on the paint too thickly. Make sure you do water your paints down a little bit. Use a palette or something similar. They are really small and really fiddly, so you can see what I did was actually held the cockpit area, painted the rear, did all of them, and then spun them around once they were dry and actually painted the front with the same colour just to give it a complete base coat. But you can already see as soon as the paint starts going on, you can see the details already starting to pop really nicely in comparison to that sort of creamy plastic colour that they actually come out the box of. The Y-Wing's always been a favourite of mine, and I've wanted to pick these up for a while, though they have been out of stock pretty much since they were actually released. We've not been able to get hold of them, but I did pick up the fighter Star Wars Armada fighter pack recently, so straight away I was like, I wanted to get them painted before I even fielded them, just so they can sort of match the actual main models and the bigger models for Star Wars Armada as well. So as I say, it's always been a favourite of mine. It really is a workhorse and has been used since the Clone Wars in the era, though they were a little bit more up armoured. These have been sort of stripped in comparison to the ones in the Clone Wars. They're used for like dogfights and bombing runs against capital ships and ground targets, and I wanted these to really supplement the rest of my force. I wanted to go with a very small rebel force to go against the Galactic Empire. The next paint I've actually used here, you can see I've gone for the lighter grey now, which was the Administration Grey Citadel Miniatures paint. You can see I essentially coating the cockpit area and the front of the nacelles to sort of give that effect that you get from the films, really, and just so they're matching really nicely. The actual Y-Wing itself was in loads of films. It was in New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and Empire Strikes Back, as well as being seen in the animated series, The Clone Wars, and Star Wars Rebels as well. It was actually in quite a cool episode in Star Wars Rebels where they salvaged 14 Y-Wings just before they were being turned to scrap. And it was the Ghost crew that actually took these and got these actually for the rebellion to use to fight with. My love really came from the actual rebellion era, though, where obviously the original series of films where they saw service in the Galactic Civil War, where you got rebel pilots actually using them to attack the Empire, especially the Death Star itself, and trying to take it on, though they were destroyed in the process, and Luke and his X-Wing actually had to fire that final final torpedo down the tube and destroy the Death Star. But these are actually absolutely amazing. I've wanted to get them for so long. I think they're really cool, and there's so much details on this model as well. You can see just by looking at them on the screen how much detail are actually on the small model itself. For them being a very, very small miniature, they've got so much detail on them. One of the main details you're going to have to pick out on these is the actual windows and the darkness around the nacelles as well, because in the films they're actually empty. You can see on the graphic there, there's the rear part of the actual engine area is essentially there's nothing there. It's pretty much see-through. So what I did to try and represent this was paint it black, so as you look in, it would imply that you can look straight the way through it. And obviously just the windows as well. The windows on the side of the cockpit I wasn't able to do. It's just so small. I wasn't even going to attempt trying to get the paint on the windows on the sides. So I just did the front, and I think that's good enough. And you'll see from the end product really, once it's been finished painted, you'll see what I mean by that. The sides are a little bit tricky because there's no indents. You can see on the tops of the model you've got like an indent, and the same on the bottom as well, just on the engine area. So they're really, really easy to pick out, and you can paint that black straight away. And the paint I used is a Corvus black for these, but the sides don't have those indents, so it's a little bit more difficult. So you have to be really, really careful to try and get those sort of lines on the sides to try and make it look equal to the tops and the bottom really, though you don't see the bottom very much, I suppose. So the next colour we went on to was the actual squadron colours themselves, and what table wouldn't be complete without having gold squadron there. So the first one we did was use the Avalanche Sunset, essentially just around the front and the sides of the actual cockpit itself. I didn't do around the nacelles. I just thought it would be too tricky to try and pick those out. You could give that a go yourself, and I think it'd look really effective to have that sort of gold trim around there. But I didn't do that myself, and I didn't feel the need to either. The brush I'm actually using, I haven't mentioned that yet, is an Insane Detail brush by Army Painter. It's a really, really fine brush, really tiny bristles to actually help bring out those details really nicely. You don't want to be using anything too big, and if you don't have anything this small, you can just make sure you've got that nice point on the end of your brush to actually pick out the details, and just take your time. And if you go wrong, don't worry, you can always go over it with one of the previous paints as well, so you can straighten up those lines. But as I say, you don't really need to go into a lot of detail with this, because once they're on the table, as long as you've got those colours that can really pop out, you're not going to need to have it perfect anyway. So that's sort of gold squadrons markings complete, and I didn't want to have two gold squadrons because I thought I wanted a little bit more variety on the table really. So I went with a red colour for this one, and I used Mephiston red, another Citadel paint, just to pick out the details on around the cockpit. And you can see it's a lot easier. Or I find it a lot easier to paint with a darker red colour on the actual grey, because it stands out so much more. And you can see there it's really made a difference straight away, and it really pops. The model looks really cool as soon as you get the colouring on there, and it's a little bit of variety as well. You could just go complete gold for all your Y-wings if you wanted to. There's nothing stopping you. I just wanted to have effectively to have a few different squadrons on the table. And one of the main details and one of the things that I really wanted to pull out was the sort of pipe work and stuff on the rear of the actual model itself, the rear of the cockpit, and also you've got a slightly round raised area just behind the cockpit as well, which is essentially your astromech droid as well. So I picked all these out with lead belcher, which is quite a bright silver paint, but once you get an oil on there, it really does darken it down quite nicely. It makes it look really, really effective, and it does make it stand out that little bit more from the rest of the grey. Now on the actual screen accurate models and things, there's a few of these are sort of copper coloured, but I think this looks quite cool and quite effective as a silver. One of the final stages of painting these minis was to put a normal on them. And what this does is blends all the colours together, and it also darkens them down a bit, drops into the recesses because it's nice and thin, and essentially gives it shading where it needs to, where it naturally like drops in essentially, and it blends it all together, makes it look really, really nice. I did this before I did the colours of the engines because I wanted those to be quite bright, and I'll do the engines in a moment, but essentially, yeah, it's nice and easy. You just get it, give it a complete coating, leave it to dry. It takes quite a while to dry in comparison to other paints because it is quite thin. Yeah, and then you get that final effect. So as we swap it over to Gold Squadron, you can actually see already that that's dropped down into the recesses in comparison to the other one, and already looks really, really effective and looks really nice. So the final stage is the engines just on the back. Now on the actual screen accurate model, the engines are within that open area where I painted it black, but obviously I can't paint that area, so what I'm going to do is put it at right at the rear to give it that sort of an effect. And for this I wanted an orangey sort of colour. So to start with I went with Jacaro orange and then highlighted it with a Troll Slayer orange, just a dot in the middle to make it essentially look like it's bright and shiny. And you can actually it really just stand out from the model completely and the rest of the actual greys. And there we have it, the models are complete and they actually look a lot better than that weird creamy plasticky colour that you actually get out straight out the box. I really like how these turned out. I'm really really impressed with how the detail does show up on them, and they look great when you put them together as with the rest of your fleet, and they really look better with the larger vessels as well next to them. Thanks for watching guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button to see any future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.